Hi, everybody. Today I'm joined by my friend Chad Davis, who's the co-founder of LifeCA, which in my opinion is Canada's fastest moving, fastest growing accounting firm that focuses on the technology side. It focuses on moving to the cloud, remote employees, embracing accounting integrations, and most importantly, allowing everybody in the firm, especially Chad, to experiment and play with these technologies to figure out automations and different ways to make our lives better and our clients better. And what particularly attracted me to bring Chad on is that he recently, I think about a year ago, started a new community called Automation Town. I'm actually a member of Automation Town, and it's really, really cool. It's a whole bunch of accountants and accounting adjacent professionals that all day long are asking questions, chatting, or sharing about how they're automating processes and workflows, both with technology and non-technological aspects. So it's a really cool community. Chat's at the forefront. Many of the other thought leaders inside of it share different things. So I'm excited to talk to Chat in this podcast style and get really, really deep into technology and AI today. So Chat, welcome, and I'm super happy to have you here.
What an intro. I mean, that little automation town is the geeky corner of the internet that I wished I had 10 years ago. And like, it is more fun for me to spend time there than it is anywhere else. Like, I really love it. And the people there are way smarter. Like, they're the ones building on these tools and these apps, and they're like experimenting, and they're at the forefront of all this stuff. But at the other end, there's beginners that just want to come along and see what all the other people are talking about. And like, that's what I loved about it. And yeah, it was started up in August, and really, really excited for what that's going to look like over the next couple of years.
Absolutely. So the first thing I'll ask you to do is go into the description of the podcast or the video and click on the Automation Town link and join it. I think it's $50 a month, Chad.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
It's $39. This is not meant to
40.
be something you have to really stress
Awesome.
too much about.
Amazing. Okay, so it's very, very low cost, and you have access to a humongous brain trust of people like Chad, like myself, many other folks, Jason Stats, that are playing with these technologies. They're experimenting in thought and in actuality, playing with the actual apps to kind of paint the future that we want for the accounting profession with technology that is imagined and developed by us, the professionals working on it. I think both Chad and I agree that we do not want the AI narrative to be one that is being controlled and managed by the technology companies or by the outsourcers or by the other industries that want a portion of what is supposed to be one of the most profitable industries and professions out there, accounting. So everybody wants a piece of it. So I think all these externalities want to tap into the narrative that AI is going to make us obsolete. That way they can take a piece of our pie. Accounting is not going to go away. Accounting will not disappear. I think our relationship with accounting will change. Our relationship with accountants will change. And our relationship to accountants as the hoarders or gatekeepers of the knowledge will change through AI. And what Chad and I want to talk about is let's kind of do a summary of everything that has us excited about AI for the past year, break down the different models, the different technical aspects, the different terms, and then take you into a little bit of a geeky journey of how we have been discovering and opening up this Pandora's box and helping other accountants navigate it. So, Chad, let's start with that. What's the most important thing that you can tell us about AI right now?
Well, first, you said a year, and I only prepped for 6 months. So how about we do 6 months? There's a lot that happened in the last year. But yeah,
okay,
we'll
2025, or only 2025.
2025 so
okay,
far, like a post-tax season update kind of thing.
Perfect.
That's fantastic. I think when you start through the lens of, you realize that everybody is on a different journey. Everyone has a different technical prowess, and everybody has a different interest in technology. It really shapes your foundational approach to, you know what? I'm not always right. They're not always right. We're all just a whole bunch of humans with our own opinions who are navigating this all together. And because there's been so much change happen in such a short amount of time, wow, is it really interesting to see the people that think that they've got it all figured out versus the people that are so new to it that they have no idea where to start, and everybody in between. And I think the more we talk about it, the more people can form their own opinions. And I think for the people that are interested in this and they really want to learn, there is so much information to take in, and it's like really exhausting. So figuring out how much effort to put into this education component versus how it's going to affect your company versus how it's going to like match with your personality, man, it's going to be different for every single person. So this is why we can't judge people. Oh, this person's smarter or this person's not so smart. Like that is not the lens to look at this through. And I think that's why when I meet people that are so absolute in their convictions about something related to AI, you almost have to wonder like what are their motives for being so crass about something, right? You meet the people that say, "Oh, I will never ever put confidential information into a tool." Or you meet the people that say, "I will never ever trust AI because it hallucinates." Or all these absolutes that are just no longer true. Now, they're true to a degree, and there's, of course, considerations you have to make for every decision you make with what you want to do with AI. But I think that like forming opinions based on the information and effort you put into learning, I mean, and being genuinely curious is the right approach. And realizing that things change daily. So if you say, I will not do something because of this, I mean, there's a good chance that this has been updated and it might be okay now. I don't know. Are you seeing something like that too?
Absolutely. And I think one of the great examples is when you see ChatGPT, version 1 of ChatGPT, or version 1 retail, right? The one that came out for people to play with. ChatGPT did not search the web, and it was trained up to, I believe, was September or June or 2021. And the absolute truth at that moment in time is that ChatGPT is about 3 years old in terms of knowledge. Therefore, it's kind of obsolete for something that you want to search recently. Then they added web search, which is through Bing. And then, okay, so now you can search the web, but it's Bing. It's not Google, so it's not as good or not as relevant or whatever. And then Google came out with Bard or Gemini or whatever, where now the search is ubiquitous. It's part of the system. Like if you ask ChatGPT, what's your knowledge cutoff date? It will tell you. I forget what it is now, April 2024 or whatever. But if you ask Google, it'll say, this is not a concept that we manage in the Gemini world because we are tapped into Google, into the Googleverse. So things that are absolute true one day, the next day, they could completely change. Claude, the same thing. Claude didn't search the web. Now it searches the web. At some point, you couldn't create images in ChatGPT. Now you can create images. So it's one of those things that the truth of today might not be the truth of tomorrow. So you cannot convince yourself of one thing because of one thing that's true today, because at the speed that this is moving, you might start talking to somebody about AI with the limited knowledge you have, and you will sound like you're a complete Neanderthal because you are like 1 month late, all the new things that came out. So I'm not trying to scare you into, hey, you can only deal with AI if you're super nerdy like us and playing with every day. But this is the type of thing that is developing so fast. And I think, Chad, I'll ask you what you think about this. I think this is only a short-term phenomenon. I think the speed of growth of AI in like the next 2 to 3 years is going to continue to feel like this, but then at some point it will just be there and you won't even know that it changed, kind of like the internet, right? So when the internet first came out, I remember I was like 14 years old. You start looking at websites and you're like, oh, now they have a website that does this, or now they do this. Now you can do this online. And now all of a sudden, being able to do new things online is no longer a surprise. It just happens and it's just there. And I think we're going to make a transition from AI being fascinating on what it couldn't do yesterday, what it could do today, to it's totally normal that, oh, of course, now it does that. It just makes total sense.
My kids have been using it since it came out, right? Like that's their tutor. And I'm actively working with them to make sure that they know exactly which models to use and which ones are limited. And man, my almost 14-year-old is a whiz. My 9-year-old, almost 10-year-old, like he is helping his math with this. Like it is awesome. And like this is again coming back to like people, well, it could not do math. Like, yeah, you're right. But a year ago it was kind of crap at math. But now it's pretty fantastic with some of the vision models. And I'm not to say like, oh, just go throw your kids out to AI. But like to a point, yes, like it is meeting the kids where they're at, just like it's meeting the workers where they're at. And I think this is another phenomenon, which I don't know if we need to get into today, but it's like, I feel like humans are the impetus to progress, right? The bigger the company, the more they say no. The smaller the company, the more they say yes. And there's going to be this like convergence or divergence, whatever the word is, somewhere in the middle where it is no longer going to need a 2,000 person accounting firm to be able to serve the really, really complex needs of some of these companies out there. And like, that's what I'm kind of excited about, is this equilibrium that we're going to hit when the masses start realizing exactly what you said, which is it's just going to happen.
Yeah. And look, I want to think about spreadsheets for a second. So when you think of giving everyone a copy of Excel in your firm, or you using Excel yourself, you don't think of the person that you didn't hire to do it manually by hand instead of using Excel. You don't think about that. Right now, we're in this situation where you think of AI as something that eventually is going to replace a headcount, or like a lot of companies right now, they announce that they're not going to be doing new hiring unless somebody actually can make a case for hiring a person over using AI for that. So I don't think we're at that moment yet where AI can fully replace a headcount, but leaders are thinking, before we hire more, can we enhance the current team that we have with AI tools? And it sounds scary when you hear it like that, an AI tool, because of Terminator and the movies and stuff like that, because we think of impersonating AI, giving it personality, giving it, it's a replacement of a human or whatever. But it's just a tool, like a spreadsheet. Like technically, you could ditch the spreadsheet and you can have somebody by hand doing the calculations and using an old calculator. But we don't do that because it's ridiculous not to, because the spreadsheets exist. I think AI is going to take that same place where they're just going to exist, and it will be absolutely ridiculous to not use it.
Yeah, let's get into this. I mean, we've got a whole bunch of stuff to chat about. We've got the OpenAI stuff, we've got the Claude stuff, we've got the accounting tools. Where do you want to start?
Let's start low-hanging fruit, the big one, ChatGPT. Give us a lay of the land on what ChatGPT has evolved in the last, let's say, all 2025, different models, what they mean, what the terminology within the models, the capabilities. Tell us everything you can tell us about just ChatGPT.
Sure. I'm going to go rapid fire up top, and then you can pick the ones you want to dig in a little bit deeper on, okay? So if we look back at sort of January, February, March, and April of 2025, we had a whole bunch of stuff that was released, right? The hype was around Operator. Then we got some new reasoning models, which is essentially new versions of AI that can not just give you back immediate responses, but take a few minutes, talk through itself, and actually like make sure it's giving you the right answer. Those were kind of nice when we got O1. Then O3 came, which was really neat. We've got O3 Mini that came in January. Wow, we even got a new model that was like this massive, massive knowledge base for those really immediate non-reasoning models called 4.5. Now they since sunsetted that, and that's going to be gone in July. So there's some learnings to happen there around reasoning versus non-reasoning models. Man, we got deep research in February, which was a whole new way of thinking about this. And don't forget, it wasn't ChatGPT who did it first. It was like DeepSeek and things like this, right? Like there's other people that are releasing these tools, which are forcing other people to be able to get items out into the market, which is really neat.
You can even argue that Perplexity was kind of the first deep research tool.
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You absolutely could. In terms of other models, like the most kind of unknown update that OpenAI came out with during this kind of quarter was something called 4.1. And if you've noticed things like Blue Jay and Thomson Reuters and all those things getting a little bit smarter, it's because that API only thing is like really smart, and it doesn't cost as much as some of the like really expensive reasoning models. So that was kind of something that kind of slid in there one week. The big news though is that we got O3, which is like the big power model, which lots of reasoning, very, very smart, a little bit more expensive. And we got O4 Mini. And O4 Mini, just think of it as like a cheaper O3 and a little bit faster. So being able to process things with some reasoning is now a possibility through the API and through the actual like user interface of ChatGPT. So lots of cool stuff there. I mean, the
So
pro.
yeah, let's break those down. So
Yeah.
before we get into more things, let's break those down. So first, let's just roast ChatGPT on their horrible naming conventions. You got ChatGPT 4.4, then 4.0, then 4.5, then 0.3, then 0.4 to make it more confusing. There's 4.0 and 0.4.
Yeah.
So let's start with what the O means. So when the first ChatGPT 4.0 came out, O stands for Omni. And
Yeah.
by Omni, they meant it can do more than just chat. It can read images, it can analyze spreadsheets, it can
Audio.
read audio, not create audio yet,
Right.
but it can read audio, which means it can transcribe. So you can say transcribe this podcast, transcribe this video. It can create images with what they used to call the DALL-E model, which is probably just going to be called ChatGPT image generation.
Yeah.
So basically and it can talk to you too. Like you could have voice. So that's what the O after the number means. It means Omni. It can do multiple things. Now, when they put the O prior to the number, it means it's a reasoning model or a high reasoning model. So let me have you explain to us, what does reasoning mean within the context of, let's compare ChatGPT 4.0 versus ChatGPT 0.3.
Very simply, like there's two different types of models, right? You have the reasoning models and the non-reasoning models. And the non-reasoning models are what like most people grew up with when they said like, hey, I've been using AI for a decade or 2 decades. It's that there's a model that's trained on a base of knowledge, and then it's tuned so that you can use it, and then you use it. And when you use it, you get back the answer that it finds most attractive or most accurate, and it's really fast. So that's why when you see when a lot of people saying, oh, I had a conversation with AI and I was there for a half an hour, like, but it like lost a whole bunch of stuff and it didn't work. I mean, that's because you're using that non-reasoning model and it lost the context. It absolutely did. Like it was too far back in order for you to do it. Plus, it didn't really think that much. It just used its technology to be able to give you back this information. And this is why, again, a little bit to the pet peeve that we talked about in the very beginning, if you characterize your usage of AI based off of a model that you're not sure what the differences are between the different models, like you risk looking like someone who is just not, I wouldn't say out to lunch, but more just like really uninformed about how like AI actually progresses. And I think there's always going to be smarter people in the room, right? If there's an actual AI person listening to you and me talk, they're going to think we're out to lunch because they have the PhD, right? They have the academic, they have the hands-on computer science stuff. For us, like we're dabbling, and this is a passion, and this is like part of growing older, just learning new skills, which is why O3 or these reasoning models is such a leap forward versus the quality of those non-reasoning models, because it's trying to interpret what you're asking, right? In the non-reasoning models, there are people out there selling how to prompt, right? Like that was a really, really, really important thing. And it's because you needed to prompt it properly in order to get that quick answer back. That is less of a case now with reasoning models, because you could say a 1-sentence question and it could figure out through its reasoning models, oh, this is what he really means or she really means. This is what I'm going to look at. And I'm going to give you a result that might even include things you haven't even thought about. I think that's the difference between all these progressions of reasoning models, is that they're just getting better and better and better at figuring out what you mean when you talk to it. And it's one step closer to what you just talked about, which is it's just going to exist. So that's why when you meet people that talk about the importance of prompts, like they are not wrong. A great prompt is going to get you really far. But it's less important today for the average person to get the prompt right if you're using a reasoning model.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of things that you mentioned that we probably need to expand a little bit. So you talked about context and losing the context window. We're going to go back to that in a second, because that's actually a really important piece of this whole thing. And this is where competitors of ChatGPT are actually doing a lot better. Google Gemini is expanding the context window. I believe that Claude Max, which is $100 a month, also expands the context window. So we'll go back to context window in a second. But I want to finish the reasoning model with maybe an example. So like, can you give me an example of, and you could think about it for a little bit also, give me an example of something you would ask a non-reasoning model, ChatGPT 4.0, and then you ask the same question with a different model, the reasoning model, the O3, and you get similar results, but they're dramatically different in the approach.
A really quick example, there's nothing super to do with work, is we have a Denmark potential customer who we're trying to work with. They've got some stuff coming into Canada, and we do a lot of work with overseas companies that need to set up payroll and tax inside of Canadians for OZ entities. So we get these queries all the time. And, I'm not perfectly up on the time zones in Denmark. So I would use 4.0 to say, hey, if it's May 2025, just because of time zone stuff with daylight savings, if I want to have a meeting at 8 a.m., what time can I say this in the email in Denmark time? And now in 4.0, we'll spit it back in less than a second, and it's going to be accurate, and you're good because it has that knowledge. Now, if I recognize that maybe they're running their stuff through a translator, and maybe not, this isn't the case, but if I wanted to say, okay, they're from this region in Denmark, and I want to personalize this English email to this dialect and region inside of Denmark, I'd probably use O3 or some other reasoning model because I wanted to think through the dialects. I wanted to think through what the English translations look like. And maybe in that email, I'll have the English version, but I might put a little line and say like, oh, here's the Danish version so they can read it really quickly. Now, again, you don't have to do that, but it's a good example of saying when there's specificity, there's something on the line, you absolutely need to think through this a little bit. Use a reasoning model. It depends on what plan you're on too. So this is a money play. There are limits to using some of these models depending on how much you're paying. I think this is like bringing up a whole other question of ROI on this spend and what happens with all your employees that might need all these paid plans or the second to third tiers of these paid plans. Like it's a minefield to navigate.
Yeah, that's a good one. Somebody asked me recently to explain what reasoning model. Actually, my dad asked me, "Can you explain to me reasoning model versus not reasoning model?" And the best way to explain it was that prior to the reasoning models coming out, one of the big things that came out, social media, YouTubers, giving tips about how to prompt, is the concept of chain of thought. It says, "Hey, listen, instead of giving ChatGPT a single prompt, like, is buying a boat for my business tax deductible?" It's a very simple question. And instead of ChatGPT mathematically figuring out what is the mathematical average of the most perfect answer based on all the words knowledge that has been used to train ChatGPT, will give you an answer immediately. However, a reasoning model will use a chain of thought command. So for example, chain of thought prior to reasoning would be, "Hey, I have a marketing business." And ChatGPT will say, "Oh, thank you. Thank you for letting me know what kind of information you have. I have a tax question." "Okay, thank you for letting me know. It's an IRS tax question. It's a USA business." "Okay, thank you for letting me know. And it's about buying a boat. And I'm really thinking about buying it, but I don't know whether it's deductible or not." And then, "Okay, thank you for that." And then here's more information. So the chain of thought is you feed it information in pieces, and hopefully you don't get over the context window. So we'll go back to context window in a second. But you feed it in pieces, and you kind of build context like Lego pieces, little by little. So it starts processing each of the sentences, let's say, by themselves, and it sort of expands its own temporary knowledge about the conversation in the current chat. And then when you ask, "Hey, can I deduct this from my business?" there's all these nuances pre-built in. So the chain of thought was, let's say, the manual workaround for reasoning. When reasoning came out, you ask, "Hey, is this thing tax deductible?" It'll go back and say, "Okay, what do I know about the user? Okay, let's look at the historical chats. Let's look at the memory. Let's look at the custom instructions." And where is this user located? Well, if it's not obvious, let's look at the IP address. They're probably in the USA, so it's probably IRS. And are they going to use this boat for like actual chartering purposes, or are they using it to entertain clients? And it's having like a debate within itself, going back and forth, right? And then it draws up an answer, and usually with the reasoning models, at the end it asks you a question like, hey, here's my answer. By the way, I left out these three possible nuances. Which route or which branch would you like to go into, so I can expand the answer or modify the answer based on this additional nuance? So basically, it's automated nuance, something that we like I said, a year ago, people would go, oh, ChatGPT, it's you're speaking to a robot that doesn't know anything. It's not like a human. It doesn't think. It doesn't reason. All of a sudden, they figure out how to use the world's knowledge, right, that we have put together in these models, to also have it have a discussion and an argument with itself to figure out what's the best possible answer that it can give you based on all the nuance. So these reasoning models are getting much closer to these quick things that happen in your brain, which is you sort of have a battle in your brain of figuring out, okay, what does this question mean? What do they mean? What's the implication? And then you give the answer. That happens so quickly in our brains that we don't think about it. But that's what reasoning is, right? We don't just give what we think is the most accurate answer based on the combination of words that they gave us. We try to read between the lines, and that's what reasoning does. It somehow reads between the lines.
If I had one wish, it would be that every time somebody posts on LinkedIn, I use ChatGPT too, they had to state which model was used. Because you see people that are reading off studies, and Wall Street Journal's putting out the crazy articles based off of a study. Like, the study was built off of like the 4.0 use or the 0.1 use or something like this, which is just completely different than 0.3 or the newest model, or maybe the best Gemini model, or something else that's just come out that's really fine-tuned to something that could really help. And I'm enthralled with people that are so convicted that just because something didn't work, that it can't work. And it's just a really weird mindset for me to get into. But again, that's my wish, is that people would put in brackets which model they used.
Right. Is it didn't work or didn't work as expected? Because ChatGPT has a way of always working. Like, ChatGPT is like that friend that always has an answer for everything, and whether it's right or wrong, that person will give you the answer. So ChatGPT is very, very good at just giving an answer, because it's doing word math. It's saying, okay, there's a combination of characters you put in here, and if I throw that into the model and figure out what is the other combination of characters that would best match this combination, here's your answer. And what's also, I find it even more interesting, is that, like, you and I, if or anybody here watching, we can both put the exact same prompt, all things the same, and we can get different answers. And that, I find that fascinating, because and by the way, it wasn't like that with like ChatGPT 3.5. I found that most people online would say, try this prompt, and almost everybody would get about the same result.
Strawberry.
Nowadays, well, the strawberry is a good one. How many R's does a strawberry have? They ask that all the time. But what I'm saying is, they added a randomness element to it, and it's not explicit. Like, we don't know how the randomness works. But the way I think of ChatGPT finding an answer is every answer has multiple branches it can go to. We're talking about the non-reasoning models, just the regular instruct models. So there's a couple of branches that it can go to where I can pick any assumption that it's implied on the question or in the prompt. And it would basically rolls the wheel and goes, okay, we're going to pick this branch, and then the answer can slightly change. And this is what we have learned how to blame as hallucination, but it's really not hallucination. It went down a branch that it is a possibility that may be possible. If you were to nuance the question, this could be true. There are some factual things that maybe not, but I would say 99% of questions that people ask have nuance built in. So one of the things that well, go ahead and comment to that, and I want to add a second part to that.
This is exactly why I think Automation Town is so important in my life, because there's an example of using AI agents for certain tasks. There's an example of using AI for certain tasks. And then there's an example of using automation in certain tasks. I think we're in a world right now in accounting where we don't need the agents perfectly in the state that they're in. It's great that they're being built, and it will take some time for them to be like fine-tuned into workflows to make them actually really great. But I'd argue that most accountants can win with automation, with a little sprinkling of AI if you need to. Because of that randomness, it's really hard to rely on an AI product or an AI result when that still exists. So the biggest benefits I'm seeing from people, not just in community and stuff, but like just around town is, holy cow, I didn't know I could drop this thing into this little custom app I built and it can, extract all this stuff out and I can just now have that automatically show up in QuickBooks. Okay, like that is an automation, not necessarily AI. And I think understanding the differences between automation, a little bit of AI augmented automation and agents is really important, because you're going to see a whole bunch of marketing from companies that are saying they're releasing agents when really it's just a workflow behind the scenes.
Okay, I want to go back to that because I wanted to kind of talk about agents, because I think that 2025 and 2026 will be the year of agents, where people use agents will become the new buzzword. Like it automatically it will be, and also like AI has been, is people will assign their own narratives and their own meaning to what agent means, and we're kind of in that situation where the agents, or the concept of agentic, is it's more aspirational. That real. It's more like, we're building agentic based systems or whatever. It's like, okay, well, you're aspiring to, because there's really not that much, at least from a retail perspective, like stuff that you and I have access to. I'm sure that the big wigs, the powers that be, have all sorts of agents. So I want to go back and just remind me if I go off track to talk about agents for a second. But I wanted to finish and tell you something that someone about 6 months ago, it actually was in October of last year, a genius whiz kid with AI, and we sat down, we were going back and forth and kind of like geeking out. And he's like, you know what could help? Ask the same question. And this is prior to the reasoning. Ask the same question, but tell it, before answering me, ask me back 10 potential questions for nuance that I haven't included in the prompt, in the form of yes and no answers. So what ends up happening is, and the way I describe it is, ChatGPT, when you ask a prompt, it can grab, as we talked about earlier, it can grab any of the branches and go off tangent to potentially hallucinate. When you tell it to ask you 10 questions, and the reason why they're yes or no is so the questions are very tight and you can quickly answer 1 why, 2 and 3. So you're not spending another 30 minutes, adding context, right? But what that does is that actually creates guardrails around the potential branches it can go around. So essentially you're asking ChatGPT, tell me how you can go off the rails before going off the rails, and let me help you keep it tight within the area that I want to go to, based on how I answer those 10 questions. What are your thoughts about that? Because when that was taught to me, it was mind-blowing, and I tell other people, and most people are kind of blow me off. I tell my wife, and she's like, whatever, So what do you think about that concept?
It's the best tip that any user of any AI model can use, because without it, anything can happen. Right? You're just hoping that the model treats your question properly. I actually have a text expander snippet that says something like, do not process this. Ensure that like you have full context, and ask me any questions you have for clarity before processing this request. It's like something like that. And I use it for everything that is important to me. So anytime I'm opening up a reasoning model, like boom, that's what goes in there. Things like Command EN or something. It's amazing. And it is used probably 3-5 times a day, because it is so powerful. So for all those people that you hear to say, like, ask it questions or ask for clarity before doing it, literally tell it not to process anything or answer the question until it like gets clarity from you. And that extra 30 seconds is going to be the difference between a 10-minute long conversation and a 2-minute long conversation. So it's great. It's a great tip, and I hope everybody uses it.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you for entertaining me on listening to that. So let's talk about agents for a second. So First, let's talk about the buzzword of agent. Tell me what agents are not, or how are agents being misused or misinterpreted, and then we'll go into like what agents are and what agents could be.
So what agents aren't is static inputs and outputs. You could have standardized outputs, but it's not like the same every time, right? So if you were to fill out a form and have it process something and you get something back, like that's not an agent. That is a workflow. There might be an agentic component mid-side if you get really complicated, but like that's not what it is. An agent by definition, and again, this is up for debate with the academics and everyone, is like, actually, what is an agent, right? Does it think for itself? Does it use its own reasoning? Do you just provide it the tools and the access and it figures out everything? Yeah, maybe, but if you look at every single agent tool that's commercially available to average people, you can still create guardrails inside of the agents with which elements of the tool that can be used. How far back can you use the data? Which ones are off limits? Like agents are programmatic and they are absolutely customizable. But it's just so early days with all these tools that as the models get better, like for example, Claude, like essentially is being built for all these agents. As things went from 3.5 to 3.7, the agents got so friggin' smart, like Cursor, Replit, Windsurf, all these things that like we're building apps, all of a sudden had way less errors. Still lots of errors, but like way less because the model underlying it was good. So an agent is essentially something where you're giving it an outcome and it's using its own brain and the tools available to complete the task without you explicitly saying, do this, 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 and this. It's probably the best thing I've got, and it's probably the worst thing a really smart person would say.
Yeah, it's not an easy one, but when we think about like the original automation tool, so I'm going to go back to when you started doing automation town style work, right? Maybe videos or content or podcasts, things that you collaborated with Jason Stats prior to AI. When you thought about automation, generally the first thing that came to mind is Zapier, right? Or Make, right? Is we're gonna tell it, grab this field from this piece of information using the API to go into Google Sheets, grab this piece of data and then connect to QuickBooks or to Xero and load the customer in there or load the invoice in there. You're explicitly saying what you need to do with every single field. You're mapping every single field from one app to the other app. And you're also potentially creating triggers. You're saying, if something happens in this third app, go ahead and get the data from app A and put it into app C. So making Zapier, it's like a visual if formula for connecting multiple apps together. You're saying, if this happens, then do that. The way I like to think of agents is you don't have to give it every single instruction. You can give it, like you said, the guardrails in terms of the most you can do, agent, is create a new invoice. That's the maximum amount of things that you can do. But I'm not going to tell you where to map the fields. I'm going to tell you where you can get the data from. You're going to use AI to extrapolate based on all the available fields. And the data that's not there, pre-fill it with blank or pre-fill it with something because it's a required field, or use this default account, or infer based on the information you're reading which account it will go to, then process the transaction. So the agent is a component of a workflow that will make decisions in your behalf based on the restrictions that you give it or the instructions you give it, and it will probably use ChatGPT or OpenAI, Claude, or Google Gemini, or DeepSeek, or Llama, or use one model to make that decision for you. Would you say that's a good way to explain it too?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, so now, the next phase of this, so now we understand what agents are. How do accountants prepare for the post-AI agentic world? Do we need to start getting so good at this that we can build our own agents? Do we need to get good enough so we can use the automation tools like Zapier or Make, and then we know how to manipulate an agent within those tools? Or do we just wait until the app companies create the agents, so to speak, and we use them when they're available? What are your thoughts about like how we prepare for this?
Do you ever meet people where like what they do is very different than what they say? I think you can judge a lot by a person by what they're actually doing, right? I wish every accountant that spoke out publicly about things was, you could see their income statement or their cash flow statement behind all that stuff. It would instantly validate what they're saying. The same is true with all this agent work. Like, you have to understand people's motives. And I think the people that are the most jacked on this are the ones that have something really to gain from it, right? So you see the big four doing and spending hundreds of millions of dollars, and like their payoff is great because they get to fire 100,000 people, right? Like there's actually huge motives behind it. For me, I don't have a single agent replacing people's work right now because it's too unreliable, and the cost to make it reliable for a 60-person accounting firm in Canada just doesn't exist. Now, it could, and it might be great. But again, you always have to have people that are willing to maintain it and have some oversight because it's just not there right now for the masses. So I think, to your question, what can people do to prepare? The best advice that I've taken myself is make sure that every element of your firm is understood. Like, what is the outcome? What are you selling? What are people paying you for? What makes you unique? When you figure that out, like for us, it's a human element really related to like an amazing payroll experience. It is frequent, accurate accounts payable processing so that other people don't have to do it. It's controller level work that catches all the crap that happens throughout the month and can be forced off to CFOs and, owners at will. And when we understand that, we realize that all of our processes need to adhere to accuracy. Like, there's no room for error. So a really weird thing about Canada versus US is like, we need receipts for everything. Imagine like processing a bank feed and we can't use AI because we don't have the receipt behind it to figure out how much tax to get back. Like, it's tough. So we have to design all these processes to be able to understand what people are really paying us for. Because eventually some of these things will be agents. Some of these things won't even exist because the way that we get data is going to completely change. So document that. Figure out what exactly it is that the outcomes are and what you're currently doing. Because when the tools become commercially available, it'll be a lot easier to implement them. And if you do want to build it yourself because the tools will be too expensive, the commercially available tools will probably be good enough for certain things that the average technical user can implement. But again, today, like May 2025, it is really tough to rely on it. And the people that are relying on it are spending a lot of money maintaining it.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I see so many people saying, I automated this, I automated that, and then they show you a video, but the video doesn't show all the details. It only shows, they're pressing a couple buttons and then the outcome at the end, but they're not explaining that only worked once, it didn't work the second time, or how many iterations it took, or how many times you interjected and fixed something before you did that. I wish people were kind of like you and me, where they say, I'm experimenting with this, I'm experimenting with that, and I see this as something that could potentially do something, but it can't do much right now. I wish people did that because the expectations are shifting in such a way that the narrative is becoming a little bit difficult to combat. Like, for example, I think that every accounting professional, either today or in the next 6 months, will have at least their client once per year asking them something related to AI, where the question will sound like an innocent question, but the question behind the question is, when are you going to reduce my fees because you don't need to do it manually anymore, right? And you kind of have to understand that the narrative is driving people in this direction, right? AI is automating things. AI is replacing the humans, is doing things faster or better or more accurate. Our clients are going to ask us, I think our clients are going to ask, what about AI? I think very soon someone listening to this is going to present their proposal to help their clients clean up their books or do their monthly services. And instead of saying it's too expensive, they're going to say, what about AI? Right? That's it. That's all they say. What about AI? Or can you use AI to do this? So before they used to say, it's not that much, you should do it fairly quickly. That's kind of the standard answer that almost every client does to try to preface that their work is little or they don't want to pay that much. I think they won't say it's not that much, it shouldn't take that long. They're going to say, can't you just get AI to do it? And I don't think we are preparing ourselves to manage that conversation. We aren't preparing ourselves to navigate this. What are your thoughts about that?
I think we can do an entire, if you want to, I'll do an entire hour on value pricing versus fixed fee versus subscription versus hourly billing, because this is a huge debate in the accounting field, and it always has, for at least the last 10 or 20 years. I'll tell you where I'm at, and I'll try not to be too verbose. So we're value pricing for the majority of our careers at LiveCA. Then we kind of moved to a little bit of cost plus, but we really didn't understand our cost. And now we've moved to this new model called budgeted hours. And it's a very unique model where we're saying this service takes this long and you'll be on a fixed price and it'll be up and down between the months. But if it goes too much in one direction, the price will go up or down. And we're actually selling time. And that changed our whole philosophy on running a firm, because value pricing is very profitable if done well. But when you have 100 people and there's a lot of value pricing going on and there's a lot of time required to do it, it's really hard. It's so hard. We failed at it. So when we moved to this model, man, we're doing very well. And we're doing very well because the model changed. We made it simpler. So we're leaving money on the table, but we're also adding money at the right times more than we were losing it before, which makes us more profitable. So to your point about we're not having these conversations and we're not prepping, I'm encouraged that if we spend 10 hours on a file with one customer and that can go down to 3 because of AI, that person's going to stay with us longer because now their bill is 70% less on the bookkeeping service. It means we can bring in another customer to fill those 7 hours. And they'll probably have ancillary services too that need it. And as long as we're continually adding customers and filling that capacity when people exit the system, we've got this machine that's running, and it's no longer necessary for the owners or like a $200,000 salesperson to keep working or only 1 or 2 great operators to make it work. It is actually like a functioning, stable business. And I think the more that people realize that value pricing is really hard at scale, I think it worked for us up to like 30 or 50 people. It was game changing for us. This is a stupid word, but like it fundamentally changed everything. And I am motivated to talk about AI. I bring it up in every sales pitch. Heck, if I don't know an answer, I'm sharing my screen and showing how we use AI to figure this stuff out together, because that's where the world is. I think if you hide AI, your clients are going to trust you less.
So I am theoretically speaking in complete disagreement with you. And the reason why I say theoretically is because I don't have a firm with 100 people or 50 plus people. So I couldn't tell you, Chad, the theory that I have in my head about how pricing works or should work or what clients want, et cetera, et cetera. It's a lot different. So I'm gonna totally respect the fact that you tried it, it didn't work, and then you went back to that. But if I wanted to convince you, and I think we should probably have a discussion where we go pretty deep into it, so we can share notes, field notes on this stuff, is that you and your team is probably encouraged to spend a lot of time experimenting with AI and automation and building prompts and building shortcuts and this and that, and all that time is not billable. So I wonder if you have thought about how you capture the time that people spend thinking and getting better at their craft, versus only capturing the amount of quote billable time. So just give me that answer in terms of what you think about that, and then we'll go back to AI.
It was the very first thing we thought of. So all we did was, when we were figuring out what the rates are for the service and the capacity for each one of the teams and who had the responsibilities, we broke that down on a per person, per department responsibility basis and made sure that the capacity that was billable, or the number of hours that we're working with clients versus the non-billable ones, took into consideration time for them to be able to experiment and to work on this. So our firm has one of the lowest utilization availability rates that I know, because for every bookkeeper that works a full month, 160 hours, 110 is billable. There's 50 hours in there for process development, getting better, learning, vacation, internal meetings, sick days, all that kind of stuff. Our managers, maybe 90 hours of the 160 is billable, right? So as long as the rates make up for the business model issues, you cover that. And I think that's where so many traditional firms miss out, because they're still trying to bill out people for that, for as close to 160 hours as you possibly can. And they reward that versus rewarding ingenuity, self-care, support for others, and the business model itself.
I think we agree fundamentally on how we approach taking care of our employees and utilization rate and valuing thinking time and all that stuff. And I think your approach here is that, let's say the market rate, let's just say that, let's say the market rate is in average 3 times the cost, right? So your cost plus method is 3 times that. So if the employee gets paid, let's just say a number, $50 an hour, and that's all in, that's benefits, taxes, all that stuff, right? So 35 plus the 15 or whatever, then you multiply it times 3 and the rate is 150. So in average, your competitors are going to be around that number because they're probably using a high utilization cost plus method. But what you're doing is probably multiplying it times 5 or times 6, right? Because you're creating all this buffer time for thinking, because you value the thinking and development of new ideas, et cetera, et cetera. The only challenge I would propose, and maybe you have an answer for that, is how do you deal with comparison rate? So I'm making the assumption that Live CA, when they quote something, is double or a lot higher than the average of what apparently is the same thing, which we both know is not the same thing, because not all the firms are innovative, forward-looking, and creative like yours. But how do you deal with that rate comparison? Because people are not able to see that other piece that you're explaining.
2 parts really quickly. We've found that 60 people is the perfect number for us. So we're not getting bigger, we're not getting smaller. So because we're not chasing growth, we're not having to hamster wheel to figure that kind of capacity planning issues. Oh, number 2 is we market ourselves as the last firm that people need to go to before they hire internally. So they've typically already moved to QuickBooks Online. They've typically already moved to Xero. They've used the cloud providers for a few years. The cloud providers have outsourced all their stuff. The quality has either stayed the same or lower, and they're raising their rates. There's no real reason to stay with them. Maybe they really screwed up. Maybe they're just growing too fast, or they're losing all their people, and there's turmoil. When they meet us, they get exactly everything that they're looking for with a smile. We don't outsource anything. Everybody's a Canadian working in Canada, doing the work. It's very high quality. And yeah, it's double, easily, almost everything else. But the alternative is to hire somebody internally because they've exhausted the outsourcing market. And we've got this advantage, at least for a little while, not forever, where if we're the highest quality online virtual firm in Canada, people will come to us, and that's how we get 2 to 3 customers a month versus some firms that are adding 5 to 10.
All right. I love that answer. I'll ask you the last kind of question on that, and then we move to wrapping up on the
We have so much AI stuff to cover.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, so just some inside information. We, like Chad and I said prior to this, let's create a document that both of us add stuff to, and what are all the things related to AI, technical and non-technical, that we've been thinking about in the last couple of months. And we are 1 page out of 6 pages that we wrote. So, and I think the pricing and the business model conversation is so important. And
it's so fun.
In
There's
many
no
ways,
right or wrong answer.
Correct. Correct. I agree with that. Although I built an entire conference proposing that your answer is the wrong answer, but that's a different conversation
Oh,
we can have.
bring me up virtually. I'll debate anybody
Yeah,
because
yeah.
no
No,
one's
no,
right.
I don't think so much. I think debate might not be the right answer. It's more like kind of like what works for you. My question to you is, and I think you kind of implied it or hinted at this, is are your customers systematically getting less billable hours? Because what you're kind of telling me is, we're implementing AI workflows and automations, and because we're getting better and faster, if you were to look at the average customer, yeah, it looks like, it's going from 10 hours to 9 hours to 8 hours to seven. Like, are your customers seeing a reduction in number of billable hours? Just kind of asking you to support the concept, right? That customers are super happy because we're reducing the number of hours because we're getting better with AI. Is this happening in your firm now?
No, and it's not for the same reasons that you and I like. We probably read the same news, and you see people talk about this fallacy. I don't know what it's called, but it's where if there's room, you will fill it. I forget like master's degree stuff. Is that like Parkinson's law? I honestly forget. But it's where if there is room or if there's capacity, human nature is to typically fill it up. So while we might save some time with some automation or some efficiency or just really being smart with a should we do this yes or no question, inevitably if we've booked the 10 hours and we've got it down to 3 like we said we did, well, all of a sudden they're getting their stuff faster. It's more accurate. What if we added tracking categories or projects or classes? What if we allocated payroll 4 different ways instead of 2 different ways? I mean, that's a whole other question of like, should you or not? But it increases the hours again for the complexity, but they're getting more for the same price. So that's my answer. I actually want to look up Parkinson's law because I feel like it's Parkinson's law, but I could be wrong. Like that
Yeah,
just
look it up. I think it's the same thing as like why most people live paycheck to paycheck, right? If they have some money in the bank, they're gonna spend it, right? Like we're maximizers, right? We either want to spend all the resources or
it is.
maximize all the space. It's
There we go.
Parkinson's law.
Parkinson's law. Work expands to fill the available time.
So I'm gonna be your PR department for a second, and you hired me to be your PR, and I'm completely vehemently against the billable hour, and I am not allowed to change your business model. I'm
Oh,
only
I'm
allowed
against
to,
it too, by the way.
right? Okay, but we'll go back. I guess we'll go back to that. But I'm saying because I'm vehemently against the billable hour, and I'm not allowed to change your model. The only thing I'm allowed to do is reframe how we present it. So if I'm thinking your approach, and I want to buy into the idea, is that you ask the client, look, it sounds like you can afford for professional accountants slash consultants about $1,500 a month. Right now at this moment, $1,500 a month are going to get you bookkeeping compliance only. But we're going to be working super hard at making our team better, more efficient, understand the context. So over time, it goes from 15 hours to 5 hours, and the time that we have available for capacity assigned to you will fill it up with more value. We'll find potential fraud. We'll find challenges. We will we will go more detail. We'll build more custom reports. In other words, what you're really doing is you're selling a range of budgets, and you're saying we're going to give you everything we can within the allotted capacity we have given to your company based on what they're paying me for 1 employee or 2 employees. Would you say that could be a way to reframe it without saying we charge by the hour?
Another way of saying is that we're going to grow this relationship together. We're going to increase the quality of this relationship over time. Whereas alternatives, you get what you get until we raise the price on you.
So I love the model and the idea and the impetus about how you add value to your customers. I just don't like the messaging of the billable hour, and I'll explain why. It's because AI is going to change the conversation to like the nanosecond, like no longer hours are a thing. It's going to be a nanosecond.
Yep.
So how do we build by the nanosecond? Like when I heard that, I was completely convinced that AI will put the final nails of the coffin of the billable hour conversation, because how do we build by the nanosecond type of stuff? Or will accounting firms be like like API on AI where we charge by the token and we will tokenize all the work that we do and it will be based on the tokens, right? Like that could change. I mean, that we think it's ridiculous now, but it might not be ridiculous 2 years from now.
Last answer, then we go back to AI. It's okay to change your models to match the economy and the times and what you want to do. Like we are all in control of our lives. I'm burnt out with value pricing. I hate hourly billing. Fixed fee was fine, but it had too many issues with out of scope work, even though it was perfectly lined up. For us, this allows and sets the stage for a conversation based on a universally understood thing, time. And it also creates constraints that max our profit, but also have a minimum profit. And I don't know about you, but in a world where we're seeing 2 or 3 of our customers go out of business every single month, I'd like to stick around for our team, and I'd like to adapt when the next revolution of tech comes through, and we are billing by the nanosecond. We'll be ready for that.
Or by the token.
Whatever.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we're an hour in. I usually like to do these things for an hour, but there's a lot more tech that we want to go to. Do you want to schedule more talk for the future, or do you want to maybe do another 50 minutes of like more updates?
We can do like Diary of a CFO. We can have like a 2 or 3 hour session, but I know you have to go with your kids. What is your time frame?
I could do a good 15 minutes on tech. I think there's a lot of other conversations to get through because we only talked about ChatGPT. And actually, by the way, I love this conversation. I'm not even going to cut this out. This we'll leave this as is.
Sure.
There's no need, right? We're kind of like building the plane in the air type of thing. So, all right. So I think we covered enough of OpenAI. The only other thing I wanted to mention, because you mentioned at the beginning, is operator. Is it a thing or is it nothing for now?
It's nothing beans for now. No one's getting great advice, and if they are, they're spending 30 hours to save 1 hour.
Right,
in my experience.
So operator right now, it came out. You see it kind of use the browser. The one thing I wanted to propose to you is when I first did a video on operator.
You did a great video, by the way. That must have got a lot of attention.
It did get a lot of attention. I got a lot of emails about it. And I actually commented one little thing there that I think some people will hear as a throwaway line, but it's still like something that I feel very deeply about. When I'm playing with operator and I basically logged into QuickBooks and say, do this, do that, create an invoice, do this, you see it like sort of like try different menus, right? It goes to this menu, okay, it can't find the answer. You go to this menu and this screen, it can't find the answer. And I think that these menus and the software and the UI has been built for people. Like we built software traditionally for people. Where like, how does a person expect a menu, a drop down, a hover to behave? ChatGPT, AI, or whatever might not be programmed yet to think like a person when it comes to software. It will think like software, like it will read the HTML code, or will read the titles or the meta tags or whatever. So my question to you is, do you think that in a future where operators are the new agents, because by the way, an operator could be an agent, it's a visual agent, so to speak. If an operator is the new agent, should software companies start programming their software for the operators? I'm not going to say, let's say as well, like as an alternative. Like does every app need to have 2 layers of code? The code for the human to read and the code for an operator to read?
It's a question for a person way smarter than me. I don't know. I think fundamentally, I'm seeing the benefits of having our site optimized for GEO, right? The frig does that stand for? Generative engine optimization, or what is it? GEO. Defined.
Right. It's a replacement of the Google optimized website. It's now a Gen AI optimized website.
Now I want to find out what it is. Anyways, GEO, generative engine optimization, or something like that. I might get the G wrong, but it's essentially going through your whole website and making sure that all of the structured information is very, very uniform so that when an AI scrapes it, it's really easy to do this. We get 2 to 3 leads per month ever since March because of the way our website is available for AI agents to scrape. So I'm seeing benefits. So yeah, I'm going to invest more in that because I'm seeing benefits. For the software and the technology, it only makes sense to do what you said And it was just yesterday or today that Tether.io released their agent, like their release of these agent bank accounts, where an agent does not need to go get money from you to do something. It can buy other agent services. It can have a bank account. It can spend it on whatever it wants to spend it on. Like, that is the mind-blowing stuff. I have no opinion on it yet. It's crazy. But I love the idea of progress. I have obviously same fears as everybody else if agents are out there spending money and doing stuff. But whatever. That's the world we're going to be living in. So do with it what you may.
Yeah, no, I recently heard, you know who Rory Sutherland is? He works for, okay. So Rory Sutherland in one of these long podcasts, a 2-3 hour podcast, also like mentioned, actually Rory Sutherland mentions at least 1,000 incredible lines in a single podcast. But
yeah,
he was talking about where he thinks that marketing will now be optimized for AI. And this is the way I think about it, right? So when you go into Amazon, let's say you need a trinket for your computer, right? And you don't know exactly which one you're going to buy. Maybe there isn't like a name brand, maybe, and that little, there's like a gazillion versions of that trinket, right? USB this, USB that, 1.0, 3.0. It has this feature, that feature. And then we go to Amazon and then we pick the ones that we like. We click on compare and we go through a table. And we do this thing that, by the way, in like 5 years, it would feel like something a monkey would do. Like it's the most Neanderthal thing in the world to put things in a shopping cart in a comparison table. I think, and Rory kind of made the point, he's like, I think what people are going to do is, after chatting with AI for a couple of years, and now that the ChatGPT can actually search your chat history. And I have talked to ChatGPT about my conference. I talked to it about Right Tool. I talked to it about my accounting firm. I talked to it about my fitness journey, where I can go into ChatGPT and say, I have a vitamin D deficiency, right? And what it will actually do is we'll go, okay, when has this person has talked to me about their health? Okay, here's their age, here's their weight, here's this, here's that, here's the other medical conditions that he mentioned. He's a speaker, he travels a lot, and then goes out and looks for the product, reads the comparison boxes for you, and comes back and says, I think this is the product you should buy. And where marketing companies need to think is, instead of having the product set up in such a way that it could be searched and found, and you have this kind of push marketing with Google Ads, it needs to have all the possible broad information attached to the product, all the meta tags, all the metadata. So when the AIs, your own personal AI, your AI assistant, goes out there and shops for you, it knows how to read all those things and knows. So it's sort of like keyword marketing inside your products for the AI to read, or your personal AI agent to read. And like, that blew my mind, because that would change commerce.
Yep. Let's do more AI stuff. We only have like 10 minutes left.
Sure. Okay. I'll take that as whatever. Okay.
It's cool. And like, it will change our lives. Man, if we turn this into a 3-hour podcast, let's do that.
Sure.
Okay, you pick. We've got MCP, accounting tools, or Google.
Is there anything on Claude you want to mention?
Oh, just that it's incredible. I think the Claude MCP universe is rivaling that of like Google's agent-to-agent stuff. We're entering this world where we are going to be doing a lot more, but just like Operator, it's in its early days. And using MCP, right, Model Context Protocol, you're going to see it all over the internet if you already haven't. It's essentially going to make it so that when agents are having a really rough time, maybe all you need is just like a quick MCP connection to upload a receipt and have it create the bill inside of Xero or QuickBooks, depending on if the MCP server is available for QuickBooks or not. And like, that's what I love about Claude. I'm using it a lot less now because the models for OpenAI have gotten so much better. I am on the $200 a month Pro plan with ChatGPT, so I can have no limits. I think it's really important to recognize that there are these upgraded plans with Claude and with OpenAI that allow you to have unfettered access to higher quality research, right? Because on the free version with OpenAI, you do have like less of a quality of a research assistant when you're doing the deep research. But with Claude, I bumped it up to the, whatever it is, $100 a month max plan or something. Max, yeah. And that gave me access to integrations. Now, integrations allow you to query your Plaid data and your your Zapier data and your Stripe stuff, like all that stuff natively. And it's a really cool little thing if you want to, in the browser, start to like talking with other tools. I released a video a couple days ago where I was like, well, this is kind of fun and novel, but like, what is the actual practicality here? And I couldn't think of anything easier than just prepping up for meetings or getting context from a whole bunch of places before you're going to do something. It will improve and there will be better use cases. But a lot of this stuff is just like cool, novel stuff. But it's nice to see Claude just kind of keep with the innovation, because if you remember, like back in February, Claude released the first reasoning model, right? When 3.7 came out, like it was the hybrid, right? Where you could get quick answers or you could get the thinking, reasoning stuff. And they're like, they are innovative. They are doing well. And they're what's powering a lot of the stuff behind the scenes. Like in our industry, we've got Campfire, who's, you know, trying to rival QuickBooks and like mid-level ERP stuff by embedding an AI with Claude right in the GL, right? With all the millions of data points of Shopify and Amazon and Stripe. Like that's why I love the new tools coming out, because they're just challenging what's possible when it comes to integrating AI with a crap load of data and some really great models like Claude.
Now, is there a situation where you open up Claude and you're like, I need to use ChatGPT for this, or the other way, or you use a ChatGPT and you're like, I need to use Claude for this? I agree with you. Claude and ChatGPT are my two go-to. So is there a distinct area where you go, okay, definitely Claude, a job for Claude, or definitely a job for ChatGPT?
Man, just coming back to the very beginning of the call, where it was like what you know and what you've experienced is what you tend to base your experience, what your comments on. If I was like a hothead or something, I would say, oh, like I only use Claude because it is great with coding and I can build tools and apps with it. Now I've got Gemini doing some great stuff. You've got OpenAI being able to, like they've got the really great coding stuff with O3 to be able to fix scripts. Claude is not the only like player in the market for this anymore, like it was even 5 months ago. So the short answer is, I think it's more about habits than it is about hard and fast rules. And you remember, so there's been 5 updates. This is a little bit random, but there's been 5 updates to the 4.0 model since May 2024. And they've post-tuned them a bunch. And just recently, within the last 2 weeks, the last update had to be rolled back because it was too sycophantic, right? Like it absolutely
sucking up to you every single time.
It was sucking up to you. It was making you feel like you're the best. Or if you were negative, it was like pushing you to be like more negative. So when they rolled that back, it's just another good reason to say like during that time, I was only using the O3 models and Claude for like 2 weeks. But now I'm like back to not using Claude so much and using like the quick 4.0 stuff because of the multimodal stuff, like making images and being able to process stuff really quickly, and it's all on one screen. Like, I think it's just about habits, but I'm curious if you have any hard and fast rules.
Yeah. So as you know, I also own or co-own a software company called Right Tool.
The most used QuickBooks add-on in the world.
Yeah, I wouldn't say the most, right? But it's pretty popular. But there's about 6 features that it has where I literally built the whole thing. Now, when I say the whole thing, I would say the whole concept up to the point that it needed to be implemented into the extension. I built some with ChatGPT and I built some with Claude, and I found that writing code in Claude gave me a better, more pretty output. And my programmers, the co-founders
Mark,
of
right?
the software, yeah, Mark and Patrick, they're not designers, right? So like when I send them something, they'll literally copy and paste the design aspect. They don't want to think about too much of the design. So I found that the tools I built with Claude, they're prettier. So I don't know if font choice or kerning or spacing between the tables. So if you're gonna build, I suspect that if you have it build some HTML code, and I'll give you an example where we don't lose every accountant that's listening right now. Let's say, for example, you were to copy and paste or upload a P&L balance sheet AR aging summary, AP aging summary, sales by customer, expenses by vendor. You upload all these documents into ChatGPT or Claude, and you go into Canvas or into the artifacts in Claude, and you say, hey, grab these documents and create a dashboard for me. But remember, this is a pool company. The customer, the owner is a total Neanderthal. You have to explain it to them like that person is 5 years old. And I want you to display it in a way that a super great pool designer that knows nothing about accounting would understand these numbers. And then it'll literally build a front-facing dashboard for you, grabbing the information from the documents. I found that is much prettier in Claude. Like again, it's just, and that's today. Like next month it could be different. So I would say for writing code, not the code portion, because I don't know. I actually don't know what any of the code means. I just know the output. I found that Claude's a little bit prettier.
I agree, and that's why Lovable and Windsurf, like all the and like VO, like they're all using Claude behind the scenes to be able to run it. Like the reason why the Lovable stuff, I think it's lovable.dev. If you haven't like played around with these tools, you ask it to build something nice, like it is designing all of that stuff with Claude, not with OpenAI.
Right, and to be clear, it won't fix the back end stuff, right? Like it will do all the front end stuff for you. You still need like a back end person to deal with the database and the moving parts and stuff like that. But even those people use these tools to speed up the processes and write the queries and all that stuff.
Totally.
So okay, so that's I think that's enough for Claude. Now, what about a Google Gemini? Anything that's interesting with Google Gemini?
Yeah, here's the 30 seconds. Back in January, I posted a video. I do these daily videos on LinkedIn. So if we're not connected on LinkedIn, please go add me randomly. I'd love to connect with you. I post these daily videos, and back in January or so, I posted this January, February. It was like, we're moving our whole company over to Gemini, and we're not going to give them all Teams accounts, and we're not going to give them all Claude accounts. We're picking Gemini because I believe that in the next few months, after we've kind of worked through the education piece with them, that Gemini will catch up. And at the time, Gemini was crap. Nobody liked it. And and as soon as 2.0 came out in, what was it, February or something, then 2.5 came out in March with an update in May, and then some stuff in April. All of a sudden, we had full access to our Gmail and our Drive and all of our documents. Our team was educated up on how to use Gemini, and like we're on the security policies. And like, boom, we're just flying. Because the lesson here is like, you don't need to like necessarily go to where the hottest tool is right now. Like, you just, the whole Gretzky thing, like skate to where the puck is going. Like there's Microsoft firms and there's Google firms. there's very few like Claude firms. So this is why I really liked what we did. Who knows if it'll pay off in the end, but we have like a small subset of people using ChatGPT teams that kind of need it for the stuff that Gemini might not be great at. But the models are fantastic. They are scoring higher. The coding is great. The whole agents to agents movement is going to be something you're going to hear a lot more of as it gets better and it's used more. They have deep research, which, like you said before, has full access to the whole Google search empire. I mean, so does Claude, by the way. And I'd argue that Claude's deep research is really good. I did one a couple days ago, and it took 27 minutes to complete. It's amazing. OpenAI sometimes only does 6 minutes or 12 minutes. And I don't think the time is going to be necessarily why something's better or worse, but it probably doesn't hurt if you're not like screwed for time. So Google, I'm very pro. I love it. I love what it does for our team. And immediately, because it's free for the Google Workspace, we have 60 people who are getting it to help with tables and using client data and using email search and using integrations with like how to figure out how to do something and finding discrepancies between procedure documents for a Stripe process or something. Like, very, very pro Google right now. How about you?
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things, like, so I believe that Google Gemini compared to ChatGPT and Claude is the least feature rich. It just feels from a features, from like buttons and settings and things like that, it is the weakest. The model itself, and again, that's always a moving target. The 2.5 model seems to be like ranked top three in most of the applications. So you don't have an issue in terms of accuracy and hallucinations and the quality.
I
But
like OpenAI and Claude responses better than I like Gemini right now.
so great point. But slightly better. If you didn't, if you weren't really picky about it, or comparing them, I would say Gemini will give you good enough answers. But the point I want to make is, if I wanted to enable my Google Drive or my Gmail or my Google Calendar into Claude, I have to give Claude access to my G Suite. Or if I want to do it with ChatGPT, I have to give ChatGPT access to my G Suite. Google, you also need to, but guess what? They already have access to your G Suite, because if you already use G Suite, they potentially have access. So if they wanted to be evil, they would have already been evil with your Gmail or your, well, Google's motto is supposed to be "Don't be evil." That's a different challenge here. But what I'm saying is, they already have access to it. So I think that what the Gemini model does that makes everything easier is that you already have your stuff with Google. You already trust Google. So there's not like one more layer of approval and security and scrutiny that you have to think about. So I think that's, for firms that are already on Workspace, it is the fastest way to get real tangible in your day-to-day applications access to AI. So like live, you're editing a document, and you get access to all the AI tools inside the document, so you can do it in Google Docs and not in the Canvas feature in Gemini. So I find that to be very powerful. Although the Google Suites, the Google Sheets AI stuff, I find it to be a complete joke. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't get it. But from a doc standpoint, I'll give you an example. I've taught for 15 years. I have a gazillion slides on value pricing, on how to run your practice, on positioning, on branding, and all that stuff. I go to ChatGPT, which I have connected to my ChatGPT Teams, to my Google, and I say, hey, based on all the documents I have, all my slides I have in my Google Drive, tell me about the evolution of my thinking on this topic. And the thing would just give you just incredible piece of information that you go back and half nostalgic, half I think I was more right 5 years ago than I am now, type of thing. So it helps you really think through and brainstorm, especially if you have, like me, 15 years worth of data in Google Suite already.
Oh, man, I'm going to share my screen for 2 seconds, and it's going to be on, let's see here. It's going to be this thing called it's the LLM leaderboard. And what it is we'll put this link up. It's artificialanalysis.ai/leaderboard/models. And I look at this all the time. It's in my bookmarks. And when you sort by context window, you can see all of the numbers, right, related to cost and to intelligence and contexts. And the new Llama 4 that was released, like crazy, 10 million. But to your point about connecting Claude versus using Gemini specifically, I think this is very important to call out. This here, where you've got 2.5 Pro and 2.5 Flash, these are the new ones. They've got 1 million context window tokens. And when you're asking those questions, it's able to go in and use a heck of a lot of tokens to be able to like process that and get access. But if you look down, the highest Anthropic context window that connects into Google Drive, look how far we have to go down. 3.7 Sonnet with thinking turned on or without thinking turned on is 200K. So
which actually, it's a pretty big number. I remember when it's like 6 months ago
it
when
was
they
like
announced
8.
that, I was blown away. Yeah, I was blown away that it could do 200.
Right.
It's just like Google being able to do 2 million. It's like, wow.
But just imagine you've been running your firm on Google for 10 or 15 years. Which would you rather use? Gemini, which has 2 million, or this, which has 200K? It all depends on its ability to retrieve it, right, in a succinct and appropriate way. So it's not to say that 200K is 100% worse than 1 million, because it's not always about the number. It's about how you use it. But it is an important factor to consider as these models get smarter internally in being able to process all of those documents and all those slides. So if it was me, obviously we're doing the Gemini thing by using the Google models. But yeah, this is here. Oh, and while we're on the slide, just for fun, if you ever wanted to see how expensive things are, like, look, the reason why nobody uses O1 Pro on the API is because it's $262 per million tokens. Whereas and look, Anthropic and OpenAI are the most expensive across the entire board of all the models. And then when you get down to like things that people are actually using, like look at 4.0, 438, still expensive, $6 here. And if you go to like the really cheap ones, this is where you see like this O4 mini high. Again, high means it's the highest degree of reasoning through the API or through the system. So if you see mini or medium or high, it really just refers back to how much reasoning it's going to do. So O4 mini, it's a reasoning model. It reasons pretty high. Look at that, 1.93. So that's why you see a lot of people changing their 4.0 automations into O4 automations if they need it to be smarter, because it's way cheaper than all the other OpenAI models. So anyway, let's link that down in the show notes because it is a really cool site to play around with.
I love it. And then we'll wrap it up with just kind of contextualizing the Google stuff and the tokens. So 1 million tokens, and I've read this in multiple places, is the Bible. Okay, so just think of the Bible, right, how many words it's in the Bible. That's 1 million tokens. So if you want one of these models to say, hey, read the whole Bible from beginning to end, and then draw 10 lessons that we can explain to accounting professionals in today's world, recontextualize to everything that's going on, political, global landscape, with the teachings of the Bible, and also go into my latest emails and look at the discussions I'll be having with people and write the paper based on that. You need the tokens to be able to do something like that. So you need the 1 million tokens to read the Bible, and then you need another X amount of tokens to read the other context. So if you want your Google Gemini to be super, super, super practical in the very near future, they're going to have to up that to maybe 5 million or 10 million, because what's going to end up happening is Gemini is going to be able to read, like in my example, I have 16 years of running my practice with Gmail, and I have answered tax questions and accounting questions and QuickBooks questions for 16 years with my voice, my opinion, my reasoning. I could literally create an agent that automatically answers every single client question based on the past answers, disclaim to the customer that, by the way, this was Google AI that did it automatically based on my historical information, and Hector has been alerted, so he's going to go back and answer your email. So there will be a moment in time very, very close to today where your clients will get an immediate answer from any question they ask you, even when you're at the beach. And then on Tuesday, when you come back from the beach, your customer has already gotten probably 80% of the right part of the answer, 20% of the wrong part of the answer. When you come back, you just correct the last 20, and the customer got this immediate gratification from not getting an answer from an AI. They got an answer from an AI that was taught with your voice. So that's gonna come very, very soon, and I think that the Google Geminis of the world are gonna enable that type of stuff. So chat, other than, hey, go to Automation, is it automationtown.io?
Automationtown.io is where you can sign up. Again, it's like $39. And we have a guarantee where if you don't like it, after a couple months, we'll give you your money back. It's meant just to be a thing where people can pop in and do as much or as little as they want. And again, like, we're all just learning together. So I hate like watching people sell stuff on podcasts and stuff just as much as the other one, but it is really great. Like I'm hang out with a lot of friends there too, and meet people I've never met before. I feel like the world, as it gets more technical, the human element's gonna remove a lot. It's probably why you have Reframe as a conference, just to get back together and talk about this. Same thing for this. It's just an excuse every week to drop in and talk to people who wanna nerd out.
That's awesome, Chad. By the way, Chad, I've been a fan of your work, your videos in LinkedIn, your Automation Town. You're absolute God in the world of accounting and automation and AI. In my world, I continue to hit like and comment in all your videos. It is an absolute honor to have you chatting with me and hanging out. And I hope that, in a couple of months, we could do an update to this.
This would be so fun. Let's make it a 3-hour podcast. See how many people make it to the end. Thanks, Hector.
Awesome.
And same to
Awesome.
you. It's an honor to be here. I really had a good time.
Awesome, man. Thank you. Bye, everybody.